Okay, next up, real quick, what we want to do is we want to deploy these apps in SCCM. And I'm not even sure if I haven't already done that. But so to do that, what we need to do is we need to make sure we have um, the RD web remote apps installed. So the work resources that you would go to get from here can be added to your computer as a feed. And the way to do that is go into Control Panel, go to Remote, App, and Desktop Connections. And this is what it looks like when you're done. But so in order to add this as a feed, what you do is you copy this URL right down to there. And then you go feed, web feed, and you can see it right there. You fill it out, you hit next, you put in your credentials, you get that. Then what I like to do is I like to add a toolbar, find that folder, put it here and rename it production. That's just my preference. If you don't want to do that, you can access them immediately in here. If you want to pick around through all this stuff, and it's called work resources normally, but mine's called production. So we're going to go into config manager. And I'm just going to check here, make sure Strawberry Pearl. I like to add created date and sort descending just to keep things relevant. So it's not here, so we still need to add it. So we're going to go to that location. Apps, labs, UMF. So when we're done, I didn't show this. When we're done, you want to take Strawberry Pearl out of the development packaging folder and paste it here. So, again, I'm sorry for jumping around and not being prepared for this, but we just kind of have to get this done. Alright, so normally that would be a cut and paste, but I'm not sure if I need to fix anything. I'm just going to give this one a quick glance, make sure it's ready. Got the app version. That's the big thing. Alright. So, there's multiple places you could store your files, but there's a lot of reasons why this is the place to keep it. Most of all is that these folders already have the permissions necessary for SCCM and its little agents to go in and grab the files and copy them out. If you were to put them in your home folder on UAD, it would not be able to go in there and grab your files and distribute them to the distribution points. So for the sake of avoiding that hassle, I would recommend putting all of your lab apps in, apps, labs, UMF, or your campus if you're from another campus. So let's create an application. For the app deploy toolkit, we're going to say it's manually specified. In this case, we're doing Strawberry Pearl. And then you need to, I'm just going to go ahead and say you need to, because EUT will come find you if you don't. Put dash your campus after that, because there are a lot of places your apps will show up that aren't right in that folder. So there's no way of knowing where that came from for them, at least not at a glance. And it's just nice to do that. So won't you please? Strawberry Pearl, software version. So here we go. This is why we export our registry keys. And we are not even done with this yet, so I'm just going to leave it open. If I were to put this application in the Software Center, I would want to fill some of this stuff out, put in an icon so that when it shows up for somebody to voluntarily install, it looks nice and they know what it is. But because this is for lab and people aren't going to voluntarily install it, we can skip that. And now we have to specify a deployment type. And in this case, it's going to be a script. And we're back to manual. Strawberry Pearl. I do it there too, even though it's not necessary. So our content location, this is where our installer that we just packaged lives. And then not necessarily just the installer, but the whole package. So it's UAD, Files, Apps, Labs, UMF, Strawberry Pearl, and we select that folder. Now it's going to default to that, and that's our installation program. And we don't necessarily need to specify a start in. The uninstaller is the same, but we take the quotes out and put uninstall as our only argument or parameter. Now this is important if it's a 32-bit program, but I can tell by that claim there and the fact that this isn't the WoW node that this is 64-bit. So I'm going to go next. And here's where we detect if the app is installed or not. And this is useful for a lot of things. One thing I like to do, although I may change this someday, but currently it's a viable way of doing it. It's called a required deployment. And what that does is basically SCCM will frequently check in with a computer and say, is this application installed? And if this clause no longer is successful, then it will reinstall that application. It can be handy if you have an environment where too many people are admins or your admins are a little rogue and uninstall things because they don't like them or they're just mucking about. But here are the different ways that you can do detection. That's for MSIs. This I would just avoid. I got started doing that because it's easier, but it's slower, and sometimes the files get left behind, and it's, you might still think you're installed, but you're not. So we're going to drill down to this registry key. I don't think I need that leading backslash. I'm not going to put it. Which registry key value we're after? Always display version, if they have it. I've run into a couple that don't, so you just come up with something like it. But and there are apps that are just copy paste, because they're standalone. So you just basically take that folder and you paste it in program files, and then they're basically leaving all of that installer stuff to you. In that case, you create a shortcut in the start menu, and you create your own registry key. And I can show you that in another video sometime. But right now we got to focus. And this is not a 32-bit operating system. Display version is a string. It's covered in quotes. And it's not a secret. So we're going to show it, and it equals why did I say it's not a secret? I thought that was a thing here where you put it in twice. Nah, anyway. So this is, it's not just that it's there, it's that it meets this criteria. Sorry, I do this so much that I've stopped reading things. So that's it. Now we can tell if it's installed or not. And next, for the sake of labs, I always install for system because you don't want somebody to log in and then have to wait for SCCM to see that somebody's logged in and start installing it once again for a new user. We install for the system because we don't know who's going to sit down. It could be 10 different people a week or more. Not only when a user is logged in, whether or not a user is logged in, and hidden, which may seem sneaky, but the vast majority of the time when you do these application installs, it'll be in a task sequence when there's nobody sitting there. So it really is hidden anyway. I just do this as a default because if it's not during a task sequence, I do want it to be hidden. So, alright, as far as runtimes go, these are actually really important. It may seem easy to just go with something huge so you never have to worry about it. But in the case where you're imaging right before the start of a semester, you might be imaging 3 labs in 1 week, maybe 2 labs at a time. And at least at UMF, our network can be very slow. So it's important to set these so that you're not holding up your imaging for 2 hours because one of your apps isn't installing the way you thought it would. So you want this thing, I mean, this is a command line program, and when I've done my testing just now, it installed in less than a minute. So I really don't want this to take any more than 30 minutes because another thing is it'll try twice. So if I left that at 120, it might take 4 hours just for Strawberry Pearl to fail. And the computer science lab has over a dozen programs. So I think there's a minimum of 10 or 15 minutes. So I try to make my estimate as close to reality as possible, assuming you have a good network connection and assuming you have an SSD. That's what I go with. Requirements are something I have never really had to worry about, but these are like, you know, is it a particular user? Is it a particular device with some amount of RAM or such and such a CPU? You know, that's a way to say, if you don't meet these requirements, don't even bother installing it. You know, we know our environment here, so we don't have to screw with that. Dependencies, however, I have had to worry about, and I may cover that in another video, but this is where you would want to install Visual C++ redistributables, or Java, or .NET if it's not already installed. This is the way to do it. Instead of cramming it into your package, is to do it this way because these are provided by system engineers and they do a great job packaging things. So whenever possible, I would just go with that. And now we've basically set our we've created our application. The only stuff that's left to do is we need to distribute our content to the distribution points, and we need to either deploy this if it's like mid-semester and somebody says, I need XYZ in my lab, and we just packaged XYZ. We would deploy this to their lab and then, you know, tell them it should be there by tomorrow or in the next couple of hours. It's absolute magic to people that you can do this. It's great. But, oh yeah, we're going like this. All right, so now let me just check one more thing. Yeah, I always like to delete this file, the manual, before I distribute my content. It's just like one less thing to have 100 copies of out there. So we're going to distribute our content. What we're going to do is we're going to distribute this to all access point or distribution points by using this group. Now, if you come in here and you don't see this, there are 2 things that might be going on. One is you may have already distributed the content and it knows that. The other thing is that the remote work tools may be screwing up, and when that happens, you're going to want to log off and log back on, and that should fix it. That happens not that often, but it has happened. But most of the time when that happens, it's because it's already been distributed and it doesn't let you do it twice. So now our content's being distributed. You can actually watch this process happen under monitoring, or you can come back to where we just were and check your content status that way. So these are our 2 distribution points, and this package is on its way. Now say we, and this will happen, you'll install the application through SCCM, and because SCCM is going to install the application at the system level, which when we do it this way, it's at a user level, it may not work the way that we had intended. So it is always advisable to deploy this to a test machine, even if it's a virtual machine. That really doesn't matter. What matters is that it's the way that SCCM is going to install it on the lab. It's good to see that a couple of times anyway on a test machine before you unleash it on the world at large. And so if that fails for some reason, and then you have to make some changes, and you don't, so what do? You know, does SCCM know that you've made changes here? It doesn't. It does not know that, and so the next time you go to deploy it, the distribution points will have the old content. So if I had to go in here and add more support files or make a change to the script and then redistribute the content, that's exactly what you do. You go to your application here, and you come down to your deployment types, and you redistribute or you update the content. But I'm not going to do that because my content's already on its way and I don't want to break anything. But that's how you make changes after the fact. Besides that, pretty much that is deploying the application through SCCM. Of course, the way that I'm going to do it in this particular case is I'm going to go into my task sequence. Oops. Yeah. So I don't want to get launched into another whole diatribe on how we do our task sequences, but anyway, say I was going to install it in this lab. I would come in here and I would just add it here. Like so. The other thing you can do to deploy it is you can come in, right click on that, deploy, and then you choose your collection, not a user collection, a device collection, UMS Labs, UMF, and in this case I do like to do this still. I may stop doing it soon. So what we're going to do, so you can, this is where you would deploy and install or deploy and uninstall. But this is what's called a required deployment, what I was talking about earlier, where if that app ever comes off that machine, SCCM puts it right back on it. It's that kind of persistence that, it's that persistence and that ability to work with the machine image after the imaging process, which is why I like doing it this way. I don't worry about any of these checks. We don't want to display in Software Center. This is hidden. And I'm not going to go over the other checkboxes because they're not relevant to our interests, but now I've deployed that. And I wonder if the content's ready for that. Okay, good. This is what happens when your content has reached the distribution points. And I should just say, if you delete an application while it's being distributed to the distribution points, you will break SCCM and people will find you. So it's best to just wait or have a system engineer deal with it if there's some reason why Like say you're distributing a huge one. Like I'm wondering if this has happened here. This is a 35 gigabyte package, but it has made it. Sometimes you'll distribute a huge package and it'll just not happen. And then we have to deal with that. But anyway, that's the process of deploying an application in SCCM, at least the way we do it here at UMF.